Well, I've got 10 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and start. Call the meeting of the Finance Administration Committee to order. I am Chairman Tobin Hope. I'm attending remotely from my home in the city of Mount Pleasant, Isabella County.
I'm member Jerry Jelazinski, participating from my home in Chippewa Township, Isabella County, Michigan.
And I'm Jim Horton. I'm attending from my office in Big Rapids, Michigan, Acosta County.
Okay, we'll move on to call to the public. Nicole, do we have anyone on the line?
We have no one for public comment at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Then we'll move on to item number 4. Consider accepting and placing on file the fiscal year 2021 third quarter financial management services report as presented. And we have Mr. Krinovic with us here. Are you going to walk us through this?
Yeah, yep, absolutely. Thank you. So this quarter, and I have it. I mean, does everybody have it? I can share it on the screen if you need me to, but I figure everybody's probably has it.
I have it.
Okay.
I'm all set.
Okay. All right. Thanks. So yeah, more back to a normal quarter. I think I did just about every day, if not every day, that I was, working. I did it on site, so that was kind of nice and nice to not have a mask on and everything. So that was a positive step forward for the quarter. But basically, to kind of run through this, first 3 items are on that page. Continue to do kind of the normal, just be a resource, for the county and kind of in general terms. Still, we have a lot of questions. How do we handle this journal entry? How do we, what do we do here? What's our thought here and so forth. So a lot of those types of questions still continue to come up, which is good. I like addressing those, as they come up. Rather than, at the end of, and we're getting ready for the audit and, oh, we did this 4 months ago this way. Is that right? So kind of dealing with those as we go. So that's just kind of been a continued process, which is good. The second point there is American Rescue Plan. That was a big part of obviously of this past quarter. And as the guidance started rolling out and kind of the preparatory planning for that and so forth, and then once that additional guidance came out and the calculator came out for us to to build a framework of how those dollars could be spent in the four different buckets and that type of thing, and obviously our part of it obviously was related to the expenditures related to the pandemic, and the other big bucket was the lost revenue calculation. So going through that process and gathering all the data, putting it all together and putting it within the spreadsheets to kind of be in compliance with the interim final rule, the IFR, and following the guidance there, and getting that presented to the commissioners and so forth, kind of have an idea of what the lost revenue is, and then just kind of trying to keep up on that. The questions were due. I think it was middle of questions or comments to the IFR were due. I think it was July 17th. I think something like that. So we haven't seen anything, from them because of that. I mean, that's only been 10 days, and so the federal government took all the comments and questions and so forth through the middle of July, and we'll see what comes of that. If they make any modifications and so forth, if they change some, if they move the goalposts on us, we'll have to make modifications. But right now, the best of the information that we have, that's what we use to do that loss revenue calculation. So that was a big part of the quarter. The final item on the first page there was related to the budget process. Obviously, Margaret, Nicole, and Melissa and Chris, and everybody, they handle a vast majority of the budget, but there were a few questions here and there came up of how should we budget for this, or how do we handle this in the budget. So dealt with those questions as they surfaced, and hopefully was a positive influence on the budget process. Going to the second page, trial court bank reconciliation summaries, that just continues to flow over from trial court. Great, and Carrie from over there provides that to me, and I go through and kind of just do that reconciliation just for the auditors. They do the reconciliation, I do the summary, and so forth. So continue to do that for the quarter. Point 5 is the state chart of accounts. The state is updating their chart of accounts. They've been working on this for, oh goodness, I want to say 5 years, it's probably been longer. But they finally have a good revision out of the chart of accounts. So we went through during the quarter and made some modifications. Our chart of accounts is in pretty good shape. There's some account numbers that'll have to change, some funds that'll have to move because the state's kind of shuffled things around a little bit on the chart of accounts. We've provided that to Melissa, and I know she was working through that process. It's a inner working now with BSNA, and that information has to be provided to BSNA because they have to do it in kind of in the background and make those changes. So basically, I mean, if we had a fund that was numbered, just to make up a number, if we had a fund that was numbered 210 and now that fund should be 270, we have to move that fund in the accounting system to get it in the right spot, so to speak, on the bus. And so that inner working behind that will be done by BSNA, because what they'll do is they'll move all of that in that example to fund 270, and it'll make it look like it's been there forever. And 210, that fund never existed, and again, those are just arbitrary numbers. It's made those up. So that isn't one but that's just an example of part of that chart of accounts change that we did the legwork up front, and then BSNA will do the heavy lifting behind that to get the chart of accounts updated. Point number 6 was related to the turbine and MERS and jail debt and so forth. That spreadsheet that I think we looked at back in last fall, and I know there's some changes through equalization, so we kind of made some updates to that. And in fact, I think that's something that I believe we talked about it maybe at last finance of potentially bringing that to commissioners at the finance committee to look at in the near future. So we've kind of done some updating to that spreadsheet and taken all those things into account, so that what I'm calling the turbine funding spreadsheet, I guess, for coining that term, and then bringing that to the commissioners for, bringing that to finance for future review, I believe very soon. And then also, as pointed in there in point 6, was some data gathering and so forth, and attending meetings and everything for the bond anticipation note that was issued, and those funds, bringing those funds into account. Attended various meetings, as it mentions there, and to be a resource, whether it was finance or work session or whatever it may be. So attending those various meetings, continuing to do journal entry review. That's something actually I was just looking at this morning, and a lot of journal entries. I didn't get to review them last week just because of going out to Commission on Aging and so forth for that meeting. So I've got 2 weeks worth of entries to review. So just continuing that process of reviewing the journal entries and looking at the logic and looking at the approvals and so forth to make sure that from what I could see, those were accurate and appropriate. And then, like I said, the last point there is the quarterly reports. I know we presented the quarterly, the March quarter, the numbers for the March quarter in April or May, I think it was. And then I think that's the next thing on the agenda is the next quarter, to keep that information, the financial information, in front of the U.S. commissioners to make decisions and so forth. So that's kind of a hopefully really relatively brief summary of the work that we did this last quarter. I don't know if there's any questions, comments, anything I can expand on.
Questions for Mr. Krinovic?
None here.
No.
Okay, Steve, I appreciate updating that spreadsheet, and I'm looking forward to seeing that. I think if we keep referring to that and using that as a tool, I think that'll be useful to us. And I appreciate your work on that. The question about the bond anticipation note, is that maybe, Commissioner, maybe you told me, is that been finalized?
Yes,
And we have the money?
yes,
Okay.
yes, yes. Actually, that was finalized maybe, I don't know, a week ago, this past Friday, maybe, or sooner. That money was transferred from the bank. We've set it up, or the treasurer has set it up as they're using the term jail project fund. It needs to be in a separate fund. So, yep, it's there. It's all tucked away, safe and sound.
Okay, very good. Any other questions?
And just so you would know, to the committee would know, that in the end, it did go out to the market, and Isabella Bank and Trust are the ones who had the lowest bid as far as interest. And so that's who we went with. So it's nice that it came from a local vendor, a local bank, right, in our community.
Yeah,
And they certainly, I don't know if I should use the term took good care of us, but they gave us a great rate.
I don't think we can, I think we should easily say 0.99%.
0.99%.
wow. Interest rates are cheap these days.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, there was
That's-
another bid that was, there was another bank, another funding institution that bid. It was not a local one, but somebody else did bid on that bond, and Isabella Bank and Trust was considerably lower.
Good. Okay, I'll make a motion then that we consider accepting and placing on file the fiscal year 2021 third quarter financial management service report as presented.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, and we move on to item number 5, consider accepting and placing on file the fiscal year 2021 third quarter financial report as presented. And
I believe that's me, Mr. Chairman.
take it away.
Okay, so we'll start as we always do with the revenues, and I'm not going to read through everything. I'm going to talk about some highlighted areas. You'll see that the taxes received are low. Of course, those have started to come in as of July 1st, so we anticipate receiving those in. So as far as revenues, we are currently at 36.28% of revenues. As far as any other ones that might be interesting are the fines and forfeitures. Well, the other thing I want you to know about taxes too was that 4.4 million was reversed of the tax revenues because they were from last year. So those are accounting functions that have to happen. So I'm sorry, I just dropped something. So in the end, I think that we will be hopefully fine with the tax revenues. As far as the licenses and permits, where we are looking at 50%, those are expenses to the county. They're basically a wash. I will say that dog licenses and animal control are down a little, which is interesting because on the news you're reading or hearing a lot about a lot of adoptions that happened during the lockdown and the pandemic, right? But as we're coming out of it, those licenses are down a bit. Where we are looking at with the fines and forfeitures, that's just a timing issue for some of the revenues. COVID has had an effect on some of the trial court revenues, and they're going to be lower than normal. And the diverted felons for the state revenue that we received in 2021 was all pushed back into 2020. So when we receive that in 22, we'll push it back to 21. Those are accounting activities that happen. So when you look at the percentages, you're like, why are those skewed a little bit? But actually, some of that has been anticipated. Looking at the other than that, like I said, we're at 36%, but please remember, we are just starting to get our revenue in from taxes. So I think we'll be making that up. If you go to expenditures, and I think it's important for us to, kind of look at the the bottom line of these sections for expenditure. So this is, this report is for 9 months as of June 30th. So if you look at you look at the headings of the report and you look at legislative, we're close to 75%. If you look at judicial, again, 75.73%. If you look at general government, 73%. Public safety, 74.6%. Community economic development, 63%. Public works, 95%. Some of that obviously is due to the drain. And then you look at the health and welfare, 66%. Looking at, contingency 0, we haven't used the contingency. Looking at other financial uses, 79.28%. So as a total for expenditures, we're at 74.30%. And I think that, sometimes we kind of get ourselves into looking at every single line item, and those go up and down depending on what the businesses of that department or that office. I will say that as far as some of these expenditures, if you look at, we'll just pick the jury board, and I don't really want to pick on anybody, but that's down because we haven't had juries, right? And the court has gone back to having juries sometime this summer. I can't remember exactly when, but those will be increasing. Managed assigned counsel, again, the expenditures are down, not a bad thing, because again of the court situation. Remonumentation, you look at central services is up because we had some big postage activities with departments like equalization, et cetera. MSU extension, pretty darn consistent. Marine safety, up a little bit. Again, it's timing. Expenditures occurred during the warmer summer months. Emergency management, allocating less hours to our emergency management grant in the last quarter. That will increase in next quarter and kind of even out. Landfill, little less activity so far this year. Medical examiner, it's a timing issue for the billing that will get back on track probably in the next payment cycle. Human Rights Committee, little activity so far this year. They're starting to meet again more consistently, I think, as we move forward. And then the transfer out to MIDC, that's a requirement of what we have to put in our local share in a separate fund. So that was 100% at the beginning of the grant. So other than that, when you look at other revenues, Parks and Recreation, again, we're looking at, as far as revenues, millage timing, property taxes. It's a good thing. Friend of the court, that has to do with the grant reimbursement. Haven't received it yet from the state for May and June, so that'll even out. Friend of the court, grant reimbursement again, waiting to receive from the state. The reports were all done timely. Central dispatch, timing of when revenues come in. We'll see an increase at the year before the year end. And then expenditures for Parks and Recreation, again, a timing, seasonal. We'll have more expenditures in July through September. And as far as expenditures for kids who are receiving care financed through the child care fund, as was stated earlier by our court administrator in the previous meeting, they have less kids, less youth in programs right now. And these things go up and down, up and down, up and down. So when you look at where we are in total and you look at the big picture, as far as expenditures, we're in fine shape. As far as revenues, we're waiting for revenues to come in. And I think we'll end up at the end of the year in fine shape. It's always this time of year when we don't have those tax revenues, and it's familiar territory.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Questions? Yeah, Commissioner Jazinski.
I just have one on the revenue page, very first one.
Yes, sir.
Transfers in from indirect costs. Do we collect on that semi-annual or quarterly?
So, that's a very good, do we collect on that? I like that term. I think that we do that, and I would have to look back on that. I don't want to misspeak. Let me look back and I'll email you folks and let you know. Although, Steve, do you know off the top of your head?
I don't know for sure. I think, well, since it's close to 100%, I would.
think that goes early. I think we do that all at one time, but we can.
That's what I would think too, but I don't want to misspeak. I'm not 100% sure.
I'm not 100%. I think it's annually, but let me check and I will email out everybody on the screen.
Okay, the only other question I have, looks like there's still 18,494 uncollected. Is that because of some reduction in the assigned costs, or is
For
there
indirect,
somebody out there that hasn't paid yet?
so, well,
It's a small amount, but,
well, that's a good question. Let me check on that and I'll get back to you.
all right, thank you.
Good questions. Commissioner Horton? you have any-
Nope, I don't have,
Okay.
like I said, no, obviously the big unspoken thing in the room is the taxes to be collected yet. We're now gonna keep our fingers crossed with that. And Steve, just off the top of your head, or Margaret, if you can answer this, what did we see? And I'm asking this, I'm sure I could look it up myself, but you two are sitting there, so what did we see in our last year as far as taxes coming in, anticipated versus actual? Were we rate pretty much, we were fairly close, my understanding is. So I mean, this is basically our second September or second July, whatever term you want to use, of COVID. And hopefully that will stay consistent.
I think it was pretty consistent. I mean, I could run out and check. I'm actually I'm in Emma's office working right now just for the meeting, but I could run out and check, or, however.
No, I like I said, I'm again fairly confident that those levels will stay there, but anytime you have to deal with collections and other people other than me, it's always a concern. So
If I
Yeah,
could,
that's-
Mr. Chairman, could Mr.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd like to add something. One of the things that I have wanted us to look into, and I've talked about it before, and Steve and I have talked about it before, and when we've been prioritizing for the last 8 years on what things needed to happen, in my viewpoint, from what I was responsible for. And a lot of those priorities have been addressed. One of the priorities that and Commissioner Horton will remember this because he was on the board when I first talked about it, is that, we do a lot of purchasing, and a lot of the purchasing we do is specific to certain departments or offices, but other purchasing can be more universal. And we don't have a central purchasing. And I don't want to, I'm not going to recommend, so let me start off by saying this. I'm not going to recommend by the Board of Commissioners that we develop a new position for central purchasing. That's not what I'm going to recommend. But Steve Krenovich and I have talked about doing some type of a pilot program. And I haven't talked about this with elected officials or department heads yet. So if anybody's listening, probably not the best way to roll it out. But what we're looking at, some things universally we buy, right? So it doesn't matter what building you're in. We all buy paper. Everybody uses paper towels. Everybody uses toilet paper. Everybody uses, you were using Clorox wipes or sanitary wipes before the pandemic, and we'll be using them afterwards. We had hand sanitizer before the pandemic, we'll be using it afterwards. There are certain types of gloves. Now, at MRF, they wear a different type of glove than you would wear if you were a corrections officer, but we do have some things in common. So we're going to put together a pilot project. And one thing that I've talked to Steve about is that we don't have a warehouse. So I would want to make sure whatever we're doing to order in gross to see if we can get a savings is going to have to do what's referred to as just-in-time delivery. So if we realize that we need, X pallets of toilet paper delivered, then we've already got that in the queue. And whoever is going to be doing that for us is already doing that. And I think that will, afford us some savings, obviously. And it's also a more coordinated way of doing business. And we don't have to necessarily have a warehouse to store a year's worth of, and I'm just using toilet paper and paper towels as an example. We don't need a year's worth in a warehouse in Mount Pleasant. All of us are ordering online, right? And, stuff shows up the next day. Or if we go with a vendor who's in Lansing, they shows up in a couple days. So I just wanted you to know, as far as a financial management stuff, that's going to be the next step. And Steve and I are going to start working on that. And I think Steve probably already has started working on it from when we talked, and we have together done some brainstorming. So moving forward, like I said, there are certain things that's not going to work with, but there are other things that I think it will work with. So that's one thing I wanted the committee to know. I also want the committee to know that we have moved forward on going to an electronic system for our utility bills. I know that, you know, your lists, the invoice edit lists at the end, and you still see some of those, we're paying them early so we don't pay a fee. You know, and I have to say to Leanne Grinzinger, who really has done most of the heavy lifting and getting with all these vendors. You know, we don't get one bill from Consumers Power. We get a bill from Consumers Power for every facility we have. We get a bill from DTE for those that are on DTE. We get a bill for water from Union Township and the city, and they're all different. So we have transitioned a great deal of that already to electronic billing, which is very good all the way around. And, you know, department heads and elected official can go in, grab that billing, approve it, send it through the regular BSNA system. But that saves all the time that it is at a post office or on somebody's desk. So we still have a few that are outstanding, and I see that they're on the list occasionally with those lists that you get on Friday. So I just don't want you to think it's not happening. Leanne's done a great job on that. Chris Whitmer of my staff has helped her some. So all these things are making a difference. I just wanted to follow up on that.
Thank you. Yeah, Steve?
To go back to Chairman Horton's question on the property taxes, I pulled up last year's audit. So we had budgeted final budget for September 30, 2020, 12,432,000 was what the budget was in round numbers, and then in actual was 12,761,000. So we came in higher than what we had budgeted, 328,000. That's about 2.6%. So, you know, I mean, it's a big number, obviously 328,000, but as a percentage of the amounts, you know, those totals of the 12 million expected and the 12,000,007 that came in, you know, it was within 2.6% budget to actual. So just to answer that question, I pulled up the audit. So hopefully that gives you at least a perspective of, yeah, a large chunk, as Margaret has said, that big chunk will come in, you know, obviously in the last quarter.
Like I said, that's just with today's still uncertainty with COVID and everything affiliated with that. And okay, thank you, Steve, for looking that
Yep.
up. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
The pilot for purchasing, that sounds like a great idea. That's interesting. So
Thank you. I think that you know me, I'm pretty optimistic. I think it'll go well, but it's going to be a little different for, you know, some folks for some of their purchasing, but I think all of these adjustments and changes and other things that we do, you know, I have to say it's such a great team here that people just kind of go, oh yeah, that makes sense. And so I think it'll work out great. And we might not do it, like I said, you know, across the board. We might pick 5 or 6 items with 5 or 6 departments and see how it works.
yeah. Yep. Sounds good.
Thank you.
Good plan. Anything else?
No, did we have a motion on 4 and 5 yet and a vote? Did I miss that?
We had a motion on 4.
Okay.
We haven't gotten to the motion
Okay.
on 5 yet.
Mis-
Yeah,
Mis-
Commissioner Jalzinski.
I'll make the motion to consider accepting and placing on file the fiscal year 2021 third quarter financial report as presented.
Support. So it's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Very good. Okay, which moves us on to invoice list discussion. And the only thing I would point out on these, I think it's on the second one. And we were just talking about our consumers bill. But last month we paid about $24,000 for electricity for the 3 buildings on the main campus. So I always bring that up, what we're spending on utilities. I think it's a good idea to think down the road in the future of some ways that we could possibly alleviate some of that cost.
So Commissioner, so you know that we are in discussions, I'll use the word discussions, with Consumers Energy about that. Steve Shoemaker, our facilities director, has taken that on at my request. So we're in discussions with them. There are some discussions about an energy audit. Those things come with a agreement. So of course, that would come back to the Board of Commissioners for your consideration. But we're going to be in discussions with them about some of what exactly that would require us to do. Nothing's ever really free.
Right.
Most things are not really free. So I want to be cautious. I think that we need to, and Steve is trying to reduce our energy costs, kind of like eating an elephant a bite at a time. But if we could do something with this energy audit that made sense, but again, it's not, then we have some requirements on the other end. So we're going to chat with them some, and if we might be bringing that forward depending on how that looks and what we think the ultimate interest of the county is about bringing that forward. But I want you to know that we are in conversations with them.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that. Commissioner Jazinski, anything on the invoice lists?
Didn't see anything on either list that I had questions for.
Nothing
Okay.
for me, sir.
Okay. Very good. Then we will move on to call to the public. Nicole, do we have anyone?
Do not at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Chairman Horton, I believe you had something you wanted to.
Yeah, I already
Just-
gave an update to Margaret, and of course, I didn't give an update to Margaret. She was actually there. To Chairman Hope, Commissioner Jazinski, yesterday, Margaret, the sheriff, and myself had a meeting with some representatives from the Discovery Museum, the Maury Courts, the Maury Foundation, and also the ice arena. Had a very good dialogue. The sheriff put on a PowerPoint presentation. We had poster boards, very professionally done poster boards presentation, something that I didn't, not something I made up, of course. But it was very professionally done. Sheriff did a good presentation. It was informal but formal at the same time. It was time for open dialogue. In the folks from the Discovery Museum, I will tell you that they are passionate about children, and I was so excited to see that. That to me stood out above everything else, just to see the passion involved in, and I was, not having small children in my house for some time, and not having any grandchildren yet. I was, I don't know, heartened and make to see the amount of children in our community going through that and seeing the parental involvement and or the caregivers and everything. It was interesting to see just in the door. We were off to the side. So that to me stood out the most. As far as the meeting goes, I thought it went very, very well. I thought it was a very good dialogue. They came with great questions. We, of course, I think had answers to every one of them. Mr. Lon Maury himself turned up and spoke favorably about the project. So again, I think we're going to be doing more of that. We're also going to be in Margaret said in the last meeting that those poster boards will be up during our live meetings at the Commission on Aging. So we'll have the opportunities to show them there. I think commissioners should be advocates for this, be well versed in this. And again, this is a community project, and not only we need to do more of this, we will be doing more of this. So again, that was a big thing that we had to do, and I think I did it very well yesterday. So I congratulate Margaret and Sheriff Maine for being involved in getting the materials and doing a very fine job. So I was just basically there to sit and look pretty. So that's it. So
I think you had more value than that, Chairman Horton. I do, although, but I will say that the schematic boards are on display now at the county fair at the sheriff's booth. So he and I both have a set of those boards. I sent him the one set of easels we had. We're going to order another set, but you know, when he is out and about, he needs to have that information with him, and we need to have it with us. And you know, when we talk about engaging with the neighbors, Maury Courts and the Children's Museum are basically the neighbors. I mean, there's, you know, one other property right there on the corner, but it was a fabulous hour or 2 hours. It went very well. They had good questions. We had a great conversation. Mr. Maury put it right out there that he was supportive of the project. He had no concerns for Maury Courts and for the complex at all. And that he was happy to have the sheriff's office and the sheriff's department pretty much across the street. And I think Chairman Horton touched on this, and so did I at the previous meeting. You know, it's really important, and some people are surprised when they hear that the deputies and the detectives and are going to be across the street. They're hearing it's a jail. And I think it's really important for all of us who represent the county in whatever capacity we all represent it, that, you know, it's the sheriff's department and a correctional facility. And I think it's important for us to make sure that we're getting that message out clearly to people, because, you know, I've talked to people who are kind of like, oh, well, that'll be nice to have them there or whatever, you know, if they're up and down on Isabella Road. So it went great. Chairman Horton had some great input. So I think that it was a nice team, and it was very heartening.
Well, I thank the three of you for doing that. I think that's great, and it sounds like it went really well. One of the concerns I hear, and this was brought up in one of the Union Township meetings, is when prisoners are released. And did Sheriff Maine have an answer to that? I know that he did.
So here's the thing, you know, and the Sheriff Maine, I don't want to speak for him, so I'll paraphrase it Margaret Wise. I don't want to misquote him, but he did have a great examples of that. So, you know, our inmates are generally who are released. Let me take it back a step. If an inmate has been found guilty of a crime of, you know, murder, rape, high crimes, they're not leaving that building except in some transport vehicle to state prison. So those high classified crimes are not leaving that building, being exited by they're not doing 30 days worth of time. They're going to prison. Folks who are leaving that facility, the very vast majority, and this is exactly what the sheriff said, the vast majority of them have somebody waiting for them. And so what happens is, as they come out of jail, they're like, hey, I'm out, you know, and their mom's there, their sister's there, their spouse, their next door neighbor, their girlfriend, their boyfriend, their child, whoever. They have somebody waiting for them, and they don't come out in an orange jumpsuit. They come out in the clothes that they came in with. So sometimes people don't have a ride. So the jail, it is the jail administrator, the corrections facility who are working on getting that person's release information, they'll call ICTC to take them where they want to go, or they'll call a taxi. And, you know, we have some cards for that type of stuff. I know that the sheriff used an example that they released somebody in the last year that was homeless, and they worked very hard and ended up that they got him accepted at a homeless shelter in Saginaw, and our staff drove him there. So, you know, the thought that people are going to get out like 20 people a day and walk down a sidewalk doesn't happen. And I think the sheriff did a great job of explaining that and dispelling that. But again, like he said yesterday, he cannot guarantee, and the Board of Commissioners cannot guarantee, and I cannot guarantee that there may be somebody who is released who is going to walk down the sidewalk. But he said it's a very rare instance that would happen.
Thank you.
And the other thing he said, which I think is important, and we talked about this yesterday, and one of the participants, I think it really touched her when we talked about this, is that, you know, when somebody is an inmate and they're a prisoner at a state or federal jail or prison, here they're inmates. And so many of those inmates are in jail for things like retail fraud, or, maybe had a couple too many and shouldn't have driven, or whatever, crimes that are not as high level. But when they're released, they are free people. They have done their time. They're now going back in society. And we were talking about, if you go to a movie theater, or you go to a grocery store, or you go to a department store, or you go any place, you have no idea who's next to you in line. And I think that we're very cautious, and we want to make sure, and the sheriff wants to make sure, and again, I hate to speak for him, but that they do everything they can to make sure that person has a way away from the facility. But just in case somebody were to not have a ride and they were somebody that they thought could walk free, they're free.
And
Yeah.
Chairman Hope, real quick.
Yes,
Just to piggyback on what Margaret said, Sheriff made a good point too, and this is something we all have to keep in mind. This isn't like the Ron Popeil's pocket cooker or something, set it and forget it. This is going to be an ongoing process. This is going to be like we had talked about doing maybe a quarterly review with those folks, just to make sure that, hey, if something is going on, we need to be aware of it. That's not, don't let it fester. Or if you have a problem, call. Because they, like Margaret said, they are the neighbors, and we certainly don't want to turn a deaf ear or a blind eye to them. So I think this is just one of many communications that's going to be involved. And not when I say many, but this is not just the only communication that's going to be involved. So I think that was made very clear to them too, and I think that was very receptive on their part. So again, I don't want to take any more time up, but they are very, and I am so glad to see it, they are passionate about children. That's what stood out to me. One quick thing, we did not, you had mentioned who was there, the neighbors. Renaissance was not there. There was not a representative from Renaissance. I don't think they were in on it, but the sheriff has had very, very up discussions with the principal there at Renaissance. He's also gone in the past and just recently, in the last month or so, when they had that issue with the person who unfortunately created some serious crimes in our community. He actually stood out there during parent pickup time and was there physically on site. So again, very good relationships with the neighbors, and that is I can't emphasize enough the importance of that.
And the sheriff also commented with the people at the meeting that he's happy to do some type of a call group. So if something were to occur, that could get out to that group, either via, Code Red, or when we move to the other program or whatever, so that could happen. And again, as the chairman said, he offered to meet with them, quarterly, semi-annually, annually, whatever they want, maybe more often up front. But I felt, I just felt like the meeting went very, very well. And a lot of their concerns, I think, were answered and explained. But I agree with the chairman. They are passionate about those children. And I was pretty passionate about the little one. I'm not sure if it was a boy or girl, who was about 2 years old and had this curly hair, who kind of stood in the window in one of the doors doing this. And I just wanted to go out and play with him or her. I'm not quite sure. An adorable child, but it went very well.
Yeah, Sheriff Maine is very in tune with the community and very proactive. We're lucky to have him.
Yes.
I have a 10-year-old granddaughter that goes to Renaissance, and her sister went through Renaissance. She's now at the high school. So I've been there many, many times. We both played basketball at Murray Courts, spent many, many Saturdays there watching kids play basketball. We've been to the Discovery Museum many times. I don't think that facility will have any negative impact on those three institutions right there. In fact, I think it'll be a good thing on that side of town, in that part of the community, with the patrol cars coming and going. Other than that, I mean, you'll know the sheriff's department is there. The jail will be kind of out of sight, out of mind, I think, in my mind, and I don't think it'll have any negative impact. So just wanted to get that out there. Okay, anything else, Commissioner Jelzinski?
Commissioner Horton, are you finished? I thought you had a second item. Okay, I have a couple of items. I came from the blackout of the UP and got caught up on my emails. And I noticed a couple of things this morning. And one is a resolution that MAC is asking the counties to support, to pass. And apparently MAC has been working with the state for support of ARP state match for certain projects. And they characterize the projects around 5 key areas: water, infrastructure, and broadband, local capacity and fiscal stability, housing and community development, comprehensive economic development, and public health and safety. And so I think MAC is trying to find some way that we can compound the local dollars, working with the state, maybe working with the feds to do some much larger grand scale. And I didn't know if you had a chance to catch that resolution, if that's something we're going to consider with our board.
So I do have that, Commissioner. I will tell you those 5 areas that MAC listed in that resolution are the top 5 areas that the legislation is. You know, same things we've talked about since the beginning. You know, working together with all of the funding units for these some of these projects is a great idea. Yeah, I have a draft of that resolution. I'm happy to put it in the packet for the work session if you would like me to.
I would like.
Probably a good thing for us. I think it's a, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I apologize. I think it's a
No,
good.
I'd like it. I don't think it commits us to anything. The resolution, if something comes about, it's an opportunity, I think, for all the counties across the state.
Yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I apologize.
No, that's
I
fine.
have no problem putting in that in the agenda and putting or in the packet and putting it on the agenda. I think it's certainly it's a nonpartisan issue. You know, it's not a, if we can all work together, we can all work together. And I think that you're right. It doesn't commit us. We can kind of dovetail in and out. So sure, I'll put that on the agenda for the work session if the committee would like me to do that. Want me to do that?
That sounds good.
Okay.
Make sure it doesn't put down $25,000 to the board chairman, okay?
Yeah, I'll make sure it doesn't do that.
Thank you. The second item I found
Well,
is apparently the state is reviewing an opioid settlement offer of $26 billion from Johnson & Johnson and 3 distributors. Now, I know it's been a while since we instituted our participation in the lawsuit. And if I remember correctly, at that time, it was stated that the state was unlikely to enter into its own lawsuit. And I'm just wondering, is this our lawsuit? Is it somehow combined? And because it sounds like the state has to give approval and then it comes down to the locals for approval, or?
So there are 2 separate lawsuits still going on. I do have an update on that from the law firm, and I was going to try to contact them this week to see if they could kind of collapse that into something that we could we could talk about. So there are 2 separate things. This came up at one of the MAC summits that I was at, the Frankenmuth one last week. So many attorney general, and I didn't listen to my mom and go to law school, so please accept my layperson term. And I kind of embarrassed to talk about it in front of the chairperson who is a lawyer, but there's 2 separate. So we are still in ours with all the other counties that are also doing it. We're still in that. But a number of my understanding, and this is the situation, a number of attorney generals from states then did another suit. So there are 2 different lawsuits happening, and they're kind of, I don't want to say they're on parallel, but they kind of on parallel. I believe what you're referring to, Commissioner, is the one that the attorney generals are doing together, correct?
Correct.
Yes. So that would be, I don't know if the Board of Commissioners, I'm going to use the term quote unquote, gets a vote in that settlement or not, but we are still in our own suit with a number of other municipalities. So there's 2 going on kind of simultaneously.
Okay. I know I'm going to the regional one up north on 29th. So probably have got the information there, but thank you very much.
Yes, and I can send you the update that they sent me if you would like. It is client attorney privilege, and so we would just want to make sure that it stayed. We'll talk about that. I'll talk with the chairman about that, and we can decide if we want to do that next week at the board meeting.
That'd be fine. It might be better to do it in a closed session where everybody can get their answers questions answered, and if they're,
I don't want to send it out via an email, so we would
That'd be
just
fine.
do that in a closed session. But like I said, I will tell you that as far as the local one that we're in, and of course, when I say local, there's hundreds, I don't know how many municipalities are in. The firm that's representing us sent an email out in between board meetings and said, we need to have, would you, what about this? What about that? Are you in? Are you out? And they recommended that, yes, we stay in. So I did send them something that said, yes, we'll stay in. It just couldn't get to a board meeting in time, and there's no harm, no foul for us to stay in. So I think that it's moving along, and if you're kind of following it, even in the news, you can see it's moving faster than I thought it would.
okay. Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
The only thing I can add to that, I know that the one manufacturer had done some settlements and some stuff like that. So I'll look into that too, because I have not touched this. To be honest, I have not looked into this since I think we as a board decided to go forth with this. So yeah, I'll take a look at that too, just to get more current. And I think all the board commissioners should at least get an update on it, because we've got, I know Terry probably is not very well aware of what's going on with it. And Commissioner Sweeney, I don't know exactly where he was at when we sat down and had that presentation done either. I can't remember if it was after he got on or before he got on, because it's been a while. It's been ongoing
Yeah,
for
sure.
a bit. So, and I remember the coming to front. So yeah, I think Jerry, that's a very good point. Thank you for bringing that up. I knew it was going to take some time, but if it's progressing, well, we got to start making decisions to become aware of it. Then yeah, I think we all need to brush up and get brought up to date on it. So thank you for bringing that forward. So
Okay, Nicole, still no one on the line?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Then we'll close public comment unless anyone had anything further. Okay, seeing nothing, then we can adjourn, and it is 10:52 a.m. Thanks, everyone.
Jerry, I
you.
like your bedroom. Jerry, I like your bedroom there. I'm kind of getting the layout back there. You guys got a nice view and nice wooded stuff. It looks like behind you there. So
Nice
We
big.
have a 600-foot of living space in our master bedroom, not including the master bath and walk-in closet. And Kathy watches her TV programs in here, and I sit out front and watch mine. And people,
600 square foot bedroom.
that's correct.
Wow. Okay.
Nice.
You should see my small little attic office here. Yeah, quite the difference in locale. So, all right. Good night. It's good talking with everyone. See you guys later.
Thank you,
Yep.
everyone. Take
Yeah,
care.
thank you.
Bye-bye.